I've got the opportunity today to talk to a gentleman that I have wanted to talk to for a very long time. I follow his weekly publication for wow, years now, and he's the guy that keeps me in tune and up to speed on what's happening in the energy industry globally. His name is Tom Whipple. Tom is a 30-plus year veteran analyst former analyst with the Central Intelligence Agency. Tom, welcome to EV World. You're the first time I've had a chance to talk to a spy.
Glad to talk to you. That's it.
Well, you've been around, you know, the world in that sense and tracking, you know, what's happening. So you're probably best known for being associated with ASPO of late. You know, after leaving the CIA, retiring, you took up an interest in you know, what the Association for you know, peak oil has been studying. So let's just start off first of all right out of the gate here. Is peak oil dead?
I would say definitely not. I think we're right at another turning point about now. Now, peak oil it's alive and well. It's been coming along nicely, just not as fast as we all thought. 10 years ago, when we got into this stuff, I guess everybody's familiar with the history. This stuff started about 1989 with the Colin Powell-LaHare piece in Scientific America.
Right.
By 2001 or so, the first association had been formed. The term peak oil came into things, but these guys basically said, hey, conventional oil is about to go, and it's going to go down. And in the broadest sense, they were right. Conventional oil was about to poop out. They said mid-2000s, and they were right. Mid-2000s, conventional oil reached a peak. What we all sort of got wrong, of course, was the fact that they went out and found all this very, very expensive shale oil.
Right.
Now, there was nothing magic about shale oil. It just had to get the price high enough.
Yeah,
this is all price, not quantity. It's got nothing to do with that. You know, at $10 a barrel, it was ridiculous because it's probably costing, you know, 70 or 80 to produce. When oil got to 100, everybody ran out. Second part of this whole business was that we had dirt cheap money. Thanks to the recession, the government stepped in, put interest rates down to zip, quantitative easing, Wall Street had all the money it wanted, and people could afford to drill lots and lots of oil wells, even though they were not particularly profitable. And that situation obtains to today. Most of the people drilling shale oil wells and shale gas wells are not making money. This is well known, clear as bell, but they keep drilling away as long as, you know, Wall Street continues to make the loans, and they can make the payments on the loans. They're going to keep drilling wells until last year.
And what happened last year?
Well, last year, the world, the $100 oil simply got too much for the world.
Yeah.
I personally think it had a lot to do with China. If you go back to 2000, I guess it was 8, when we had the big, you know, the price spike back to $140 a barrel, or whatever it was. This coincided with the Chinese Olympics, in which the Chinese bought every barrel of oil in sight for a few months to make sure they didn't run out during the Olympics.
Yeah.
And the price of oil just went off the scale. That's when it flew up to 140 a barrel there for a couple of weeks. About 2 weeks before the Olympics, the Chinese simply stopped buying oil, and the price dropped like a brick, went all the way down to 30 or 40 a barrel or so, then restabilized again and made its way back up to 100 or so. But basic take on this is right now we are at a basic inflection point in the whole oil market. Things went merrily along last year at $100 a barrel or so into last year, I guess about 115 when all this started, June, just about a year ago now, when the price of things started. And a number of things happened. Probably, again, historians will look back someday and say it probably had quite a bit to do with China. Chinese just stopped growing. Instead of growing, you know, 10 or 12% a year, they dropped to 7 and maybe lower. They're not telling us too much about how well they're growing. And their consumption stopped going down. The Chinese could afford $100 oil. We couldn't, but we just sort of went along and paid it anyway. And this sort of ground the whole world's economy down. It certainly ground Europe down, and it ground our down. And we certainly have not seen much economic growth the last 7 or 8 years here. And, well, from our point of view, this has a lot to do with the high cost of oil. Remember, oil permeates everything we do, not only our cars, but our food, everything that happens.
Yep.
Okay. Every corner of the economy has got some oil in it. You know, there's 10 calories of oil in every calorie of food you eat, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely everywhere. And this has slowly ground the economy down. And, you know, last year it finally just got too much. Chinese economy went down to the point they couldn't afford it. They stopped importing so much. There's another story of the Chinese imports, but that's a more complicated thing. But as far as we can see, we are probably now at some sort of inflection point in the whole oil market, starting, you know, last June, running across now. We've seen massive. Well, first of all, the price went down from 110 to bounced around 50 for a while. I think it's about 60 today. And everybody says it's going to go down another $10 or so when we get around to this thing. It's going to settle about 50 for a while. Now, this is only short term. Obviously, this stuff is going to, you know, the major thing that's happened is in investments in drilling new wells, exploring for more oil, building more platforms. It just absolutely collapsed. We're down about 40% worldwide. The drilling rigs in the U.S. are down about more than half. The money going to the offshore, all this expensive stuff is going. And the message is, hey, we cannot afford to drill this expensive oil anymore. These things off of Brazil, this sub-salt stuff we're all talking about, these deep-sea platforms in the Gulf of Mexico, they're finishing the ones they got. Once you sink $1 billion or so into the platform, you know, you're not going to shut it down and go home. You're going to finish. You've already got the bulk of the money spent in the whole thing, so go ahead and finish it. But the starting of new ones has really dropped like a brick. This means 3 or 4 years from now, there's probably going to be a lot less oil coming out. Certainly in the shale oil business, there's going to be a lot coming out. And unless we see prices go back up again, you know, to the $100 range, it's very unlikely. We're probably going to look back, probably about 5 to somewhere between 2020, 2025. Somebody's going to go look back and say, hey, oil production sort of peaked back there, you know, circa 2014, 2015, 2016. Nobody wants to put a figure on it. It's sort of silly, but it bounces around too much. There are too many fingers in the pie.
Yeah. What role did the Saudis' decision in all of this play, where they decided we're not going to cut production? So
they just kept it rolling on this sort of thing. They didn't really do too much. They jacked up the production a little bit, but again, you've still got twilight in the desert. This is not going to go on forever.
Yeah.
Sort of stuff. They've got a whole bunch of problems. Their current problem, of course, is the climate. You know, the temperature's rising out there. I guess you've been watching India lately. The temperature's running 120 degrees out there.
Yeah.
The Saudis aren't that far from India.
Yeah.
Basically, they're going to be running 120 degrees all summer. What do the Saudis do? The Saudis take pure old raw crude oil and dump it into their power plants.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going to keep everybody, you're going to keep 30 million people from out of the streets. You know, running around yelling at the government. They're going to have to keep them cool.
Yeah.
So you just take the crude. So they generally, you know, put 1 million, 2 million barrels a day into their power plants during the summer, just to, you know, quick and dirty, very inefficient use of crude. Hell of a waste of energy to do it, but just burn straight crude.
Yeah.
You know, our refining capacity, they probably won't have to do it so much, but basically have to step up their power production considerably. The hotter it gets out there, the more they'll have to do it. This isn't going to go away. This is going to last this year, next year.
I think they've lost in India. They've lost something like 1,400 people have died in the last week.
That's for the last week.
Yeah.
And, you know, it would happen in Saudi Arabia too, except they're air conditioning the hell out of everything right now. And this isn't going to last. If you think of 5 years of this, you know, with things going down the tubes, then next thing you want to look at is the whole Middle East. And my God, that is just going down the tubes, day after day after day, and it's going down the tubes. How much longer are we going to expect this 17 million barrels a day that comes out of the Persian Gulf, you know, coming out of the Persian Gulf? You know, the most vulnerable, of course, is probably the Iraqis. We've got now about 3 million barrels a day of exports. This is very nice, but it's not going to take ISIL very long to figure out, hey, the way we do in Baghdad is, you know, do an end run around it and start making trouble in the oil fields now.
Right. Yeah.
It's time to get an ISIL hit squad into a foreign company oil camp down there. You end up with a bunch of body bags going home. I don't care who it is, you know, Russians, Chinese, Indonesian, French, whoever's down there. Everybody's down in southern Iraq right now. They're going to pull out very quickly.
Yeah. Well, ISIL took over part of or for briefly one of the refineries not far from Baghdad.
That's up north. That's about 100 kilometers north.
Oh,
That's
okay.
a big. Actually, the most recent war on that thing is they took over part of it and they flat destroyed it.
Yeah.
You can write the refinery. That was the biggest refinery in Iraq. While they were in there, somebody said, "Oh, last 48 hours or so, there's nothing left."
Oh.
They did the parts they had. They just, it's explosives. I just blew the damn thing up.
Yeah.
It's going to take years, of peace, prosperity before that'll ever go going again. And basically, the Iraqis do not have their big refinery anymore.
Yeah.
And they're not going to.
Yeah. So now all they can do basically is pump it and stick it in a tanker and ship it off to be refined.
Import the fuel you need and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's all they can do. They can just pump it out, import
Yeah.
it. There's some smaller refineries down south, but this was a big one. That's gone.
Yeah.
But basically that place is going to go. If you look at the other places in the Middle East, you've got, this is just going to lead into, absolute anarchy. I spent a lot of time on that. I know it's not peak oil, but, the point is it is aiming at somewhere along the line, you're not going to be getting as much oil out of the Persian Gulf anymore, and that's going to be, really shake up the world.
Yeah.
If we lose it's about 17 million barrels a day. If we lose 1, 2, 3, 4 million barrels of that, a quarter of that stuff, the United States is going to be in anarchy. If it all goes for some reason, and I can think of a whole bunch of reasons why it might all go. You get Iran and Iraq shooting each other. Who knows what happens? Saudis and Iran shooting each other. You could name it. Iranians go after the Saudis. We get in there. Et cetera, et cetera. The oil is going to go down, and the prices are going to go off the scale again. You are going to see real peak oil. In that case, you're going to need capacitor-powered electric cars.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to talk about that. Tom, you're my weekly source for what's going on in this. Where I've always wondered, first of all, how in the heck do you find time to put all this stuff together? And what's your source? I mean, where do you go to get this information? Well,
I do it. I do it daily too. Called the Peak Oil News. I put it out every day, and I have probably 30 or 40 websites that I go through every day.
Okay. And
it's a whole bunch of them. Some are very useful. Some of them concentrate a whole bunch of stories. I don't have to look; they're all there.
Right.
I have to just cut and paste them.
Yeah.
But I'm mostly familiar with the major wire sources: Reuters, Bloomberg, AP, et cetera, around the world. I look at Chinese, but I've got a list of about 30 or 40 sites. Some of them you can look at the night before because they're the end of the day, working day in America. It's all there. Nothing new happened by morning.
Right.
The rest I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, go through them all quickly.
Yeah.
So by about 7 o'clock, I've probably accumulated, say 30 or 40 stories. And these are all, they have some impact on peak oil. They may be political stories about what's happening in Iraq. It may be the Greek. There's another big story, the euro. If Greece goes down, the euro goes down, the euro collapses, dollar goes up, price of oil goes down. Less people produce oil. These are all a whole bunch of interrelated things.
Right.
But that's what I do there. And then Saturday morning, I sort of sit down and reread through it, go through and say, okay, some of them we make into briefs. Steve Andrews, by the way, is still helping with this thing.
Oh, good. Okay.
He does the briefs. So I select them for him, send them off to him, he writes them up.
Okay.
And I write the top stuff up there, that sort of thing, what the big trends are. There's a lot of stuff in there. The briefs are basically standalone stories. Something happened.
Right.
This happened during the week period. Like Alaska, or they're riding in Alaska over oil rigs or whatever happened, that sort of thing. Oil pipe burst. They're short one place stories. Somebody's production went up or went down, that sort of thing. So that's basically the story of how we do it. I spend sort of a couple of days of the weekend, writing it up. It usually takes Saturday and Sunday to write it up. It's 6 or 7 pages, the whole thing.
Right.
But the major problem is it's such a broad topic. It sort of sweeps across the world, and things move in and out of the story. For a while there had the Ukrainian story and what was going to happen there, and the natural gas to Europe. That floats in and out of the story occasionally. The Middle East thing is just going to be there forever.
Yeah.
Mainly because that's the real threat. That's the real threat to the whole oil situation. The minute then of course you've got the whole Iranian nuclear negotiation thing, where that goes. You've got the Israelis in the middle of this thing. You've got Assad, who may or may not fall. You've got Lebanon. You've got Shiite Sunnis.
It's interesting. Yeah. And you've got in the case of the Israelis, you've got that what appears to be a fairly large natural gas field
big natural
off the coast.
off there. They're talking about supplying Jordan now, and maybe even the Palestinians. That's floating around there. You know, or they may end up in a big fight with everybody in this sort of thing. That's the issue. That's the issue now. People are suggesting now, hey, maybe the Israelis are going to derail the nuclear treaty by attacking Hezbollah, at which point Hezbollah starts, showering missiles all over Israel.
Yeah.
In which case, no American government can sign a treaty while Iranian missiles are falling on top of Israel. End of report. End of nuclear deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then the question: what you do? What happens after that?
Yeah.
The Israelis keeps muttering, "We're going to shoot things at them. We're going to bomb their nuclear facility." That's rather hard to do since they're sort of mixed in with all the people, like downtown universities and things.
Right.
You're going to bomb the university. It's a huge, that's a big problem.
Yeah. It's not as easy as the war hawks would like you to have it believe.
No, to bomb Iran is not an easy thing. It's a big country. It's 70, 80 million people there. It's a big place. And of course, they're wrapped up. They got their fingers in almost everything. Everywhere there's a Shiite, they're active. Starting with Saudi Arabia, where nice little piece of the oil fields over there. That's all Shiite. You've got Lebanon Shiite. You got Hezbollah. You've got Alawites up in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
But the basic point is the whole situation is slowly deteriorating week by week. It slowly gets worse and worse. And I just don't see how this can stay away from affecting global oil exports.
Yeah.
And when those go, we're going to see lots of trouble. You're going to see U.S. 1970 again with gas lines and the whole. Remember, it only took about a 5% cut back in 1970, and the United States was in total panic. We were all sitting in 2-mile gas lines out there.
Yeah. I remember it.
I remember it very well. That's why I have a natural gas car just in case.
There you go.
I put my own natural gas pump in my own natural gas car. So,
all right.
So
good man.
I may be the last one still. I may be the last one still running. I know it doesn't do much for global warming. It does a little bit for the climate, but at least it eliminates for a while the natural gas. This could probably lop over to an electric powered car somewhere along the line. A little bit somewhere.
Or hydrogen, or whatever.
Hydrogen. I like electricity. I'm a fan of.
Let's talk just a little bit about your. Give us kind of a curricula vitae on your background. I mentioned that you were with the Central Intelligence Agency.
Yeah, I worked on lots of problems there. I worked on a lot of technology problems there. That's some of my interest in all these emerging technologies. I worked on things like that for a while. I wrote national estimates for a while, a draft-driven national. That's a big, complicated process, but I was involved in that for a while. So I worked across the board on many things. I really was not deeply involved in oil, except as sort of an end consumer reader of what they had to say about it. But I just again enough feel for the world that when this became hot. 10 or 15 years ago, I said, hey, when I first started reading the peak oil stuff, I poked into it pretty deeply, and I said, hey, these guys were probably right. We probably do have a problem here. If these guys say it's a finite world, there's finite oil, we all appreciate the Great Triangle, it just gets more and more expensive. I grasped the whole notion of EROI. When it costs you a barrel of oil to get a barrel of oil out, you quit. Actually, when it costs you a barrel of oil to get 5 barrels of oil out, you probably quit. That's pretty close. You're pretty close to not making anything. That's why things like the tar sands are the oil's coming out, but nobody's making too much money out of it.
So let's talk a little bit about the alternatives here. You mentioned in an email that you're taking kind of an interest in low energy nuclear reaction and hydrinos and some of that thing. So
that's right. Well, there are about 4 technologies out there which the world is not taking very seriously yet, but I personally can't see too much wrong with them. Nobody's proven they're wrong. People are just saying they're wrong. Because they don't want to consider these things. The 4 that I sort of like about right now, and I write about occasionally, are one, the whole cold fusion, low-energy nuclear reaction business. Remember, came out in 1989, big fuss. The American physicists said it's a lot of nonsense, and it went, well, it's wrong. Well, the American physicists were wrong. This thing, it's been 25 years now of people plugging away at it. I don't know how many people know if there really is a factory being run on a low-energy nuclear reactor right now somewhere down the southern part of the United States. They won't tell us where, but it's proprietary knowledge. There's a 1 megawatt plant that's been in operation for the last 6 months.
Oh, so he's got it up, and because
He's up and running full bore. He's up and running for full bore. It's supposed to be on a 1-year test.
Okay.
You know, this was the Italian Rossi.
Right. Yeah.
He latched onto the notion that the way you do this is with powdered nickel,
right,
rather than palladium.
Right.
He worked on this for several years and started putting on demonstrations. That's where I got interested. He started putting on demonstrations, and people went and looked at it and said, "Yes, doing what he says he does, but it's a fraud. It's got to be a fraud. It can't possibly
exactly.
We were told 20 years ago it's a fraud, so it's got to be a fraud."
Yeah.
But he kept saying, look for the wires. Well, then he had a couple of external bunch of European physicists went off and did it in their own labs.
Yeah.
Swedish did, Italians did it. They took it off to Switzerland the last time.
Yeah.
They ran these tests, totally independent, no hidden wires, nothing else, bunch of independent physicists. They issued a big report saying, hey, it works.
Yeah.
In the meantime, Rossi was bought out by a bunch down in Triangle Park, North Carolina, who are putting, it's some $1 billion environmental hedge fund, if you can believe there is such a thing, called Cherokee Partners.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Environmental hedge fund bought him, or bought the intellectual property, moved him over to North Carolina, and they formed a company called Industrial Heat.
Oh, okay.
On for a year, and at this point they said, okay, we've got our first customer. So what the customer wants is he wants 1 megawatt of heat generated 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to run his factory. So they built him the first plant. And now the trouble is, this is brand new. It's the first time it happened. It's sort of like the Wright brothers selling an airline ticket seat or something. See?
Yeah, yeah.
So they've got this thing in there, and the deal seems to be we will run this thing for 1 year, actually 400 days. We'll run this thing for 400 days. And we don't know what the contract is. This is all proprietary.
Yeah.
But it's supposed to be producing, energy, heat, 1 megawatt of heat, 24/7 for 1 year, at which point the contract is fulfilled. They get paid. The guy is happy. They're supposed to look at what the cost of the heat is, et cetera, what it all costs if he makes a lot of money. And they say they got a whole bunch of customers in the wings to do this.
Ah, okay.
So to me, it's very difficult to believe this is a fraud. When there seems to be, it's a big $1 billion hedge fund right behind all this stuff. A lot of reputable people have been around for a long time behind all this, saying it's true. Interesting part is that most people don't know, but Industrial Heat went over and made a deal with China Incorporated about this. So the Chinese, they are sort of sharing this, what they're doing. We don't know exactly what. It's all proprietary with the Chinese. But that sort of, undercuts the idea that somebody in America can make this illegal or something. You can easily imagine some interest in America. This is rather disruptive.
Oh, yeah. No kidding.
If it sort of disrupts the entire energy industry, coal, oil, natural gas, and electric power, by the way, all get disrupted. There may be a little resistance to this stuff. But if you get the Chinese on your side, so what? The Chinese pay absolutely zero attention. The pull-up bureaus pay absolutely zero attention to anything anybody in the United States said about you can't do this or something.
Yeah, exactly. Look, we have no leverage because they own so many of our bonds.
That's the other part of this sort of thing. Okay, that's one technology which I think is quite interesting. Okay, and that is for real. It seems to be running right now.
Well, I've interviewed Andre twice now. So
okay, well, he's sitting. Go look at his website. He's sitting in the box running this thing, almost 24/7. He's down there making this work. It's very tricky to keep this stuff stable.
Yeah,
a lot of people have been screwing with things. A Russian Parkhomov got it working in Moscow a couple of months ago, and a whole bunch of people in the United States are trying to reproduce this Finec. But keeping it stable, either they turn the thing on, it simply goes up to 2,000 degrees and burns itself up into a pile.
Yeah,
or nothing happens. And trying to keep this stable, that seems to be where Rossi's genius is.
Yeah,
he should get the Nobel Prize for just keeping it stable.
Yeah,
The other invented it, but he figured out how to get something useful out of it.
Yeah.